Almighty God, creator of the universe, we graciously thank you for your numerous blessings bestowed upon us. As we gather here today as future leaders, we look towards you for your guidance and wisdom in our deliberations at this 11th Commonwealth Youth Parliament. Open our hearts to accept those things that are true and to demonstrate love always, so that we and all citizens of this nation can live in peace and harmony. Amen.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members and our viewing audience, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the 11th Commonwealth Youth Parliament 2022, hosted by the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in collaboration with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association.
Urgent questions.
Chief Whip.
My question is to the Minister for National Security. Minister, in light of the recent exponential increase in the level of crime, what urgent steps will the government take to address this untenable situation?
Minister of National Security.
I thank the member for their question. I think we need to be careful not to paint our country with a broad brush. I'm not aware of the existence of any stats showing that exponential increase in crime. Regardless, our party is doing things to deal with the crime rate. We have a strong focus on national security across the board, and further we're dealing with these socio-economic issues that cause crime. We have the remote work bill later today, hoping to help people in the workplace. Our unemployment rate is set to fall from 30% in 2020 to 8% in 2022, and we're hoping to reduce response times to crime by sorting out the transport problems through the remote work bill. Thank you.
Supplemental. Chief Whip.
Thanks for not being relevant whatsoever. Minister, will you apologise to the families of homicide victims caught up in your mishandling of the crime pandemic?
I thank the honourable member again and go back to what I said before about being unaware of the existence of stats showing a homicide pandemic in this country. Thank you.
Chief Whip.
I had a question about, given that, if the country can have faith in you handling the solution, but you don't even know it exists. So what faith can the country have that you can handle this? I mean, you've already answered it, that you don't have any idea, but what's your plan?
Okay. I will not allow that as a supplemental. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
To the Minister of Works and Transport, given the strain on the current inter-island ferry service, will the Minister advise on what immediate steps will be taken to improve this critical service?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for their question. Our ferry system has been essential to life in our beautiful public of Kyrie and Shakonia. However, we know, especially after re-entering normal life following the pandemic, our ferry system has some issues. But Madam Speaker, these issues didn't just appear yesterday. And in fact, I find it ironic that despite spending 15 years in government, the opposition is only able to recognise the issues with the ferry system that the public of Kyrie and Shakonia entrusted them to deal with for the 15 years that they were in government. Now, I am proud to be part of a government that sees issues and responds to them. Just as the citizens of Kyrie and Shakonia elected this government to do. So part of that response, as part of a government that believes in boosting economic growth and being an economic leader in the region, we've attracted foreign investment, and part of these agreements include focusing that investment into our ferry system, expanding available services, increasing their number and accessibility
Minister.
of services.
The time is up. Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Okay, so since it is a current issue that your government has to deal with, can you advise on how soon would these steps be implemented?
Minister for Works and Transport.
Thank you, Honourable Member. So as I was just outlining, we have programs in place with these foreign investors to expand on our ferry network system, and we also have legislation coming up very soon that will be introduced that seeks not only to boost the economy but also alleviate some of the pressures around the ferry system and housing through remote work. So that will have flow-on effects onto the ferry system. So a combination of these two approaches will alleviate the stress as a current response.
Chief Whip.
No, it's fine, just standing order.
Oh.
Introduction of bills. The Remote Workplace Bill 2022 in the name of the Minister of Public Administration.
Minister of Public Administration.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 39(1)B, I beg to move that the next stage of the bill be taken in later in the proceedings.
Honourable members, the question is that the next stage of the bill be taken later in the proceedings. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The next stage of the bill will be taken later in the proceedings. Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam. Madam Speaker, I seek your leave in accordance with Standing Order 52, Clause 1, to move a motion for the suspension of Standing Order.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister.
Yes. Now, Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I seek your leave in accordance with Standing Order 52, Clause 1, to move a motion for the suspension of Standing Order 26, Clause 1.
Honourable member, leave is granted. Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House suspend Standing Order 26, Clause 1 in order for the time limit for speeches in debates to be just as follows. A maximum of 10 minutes for the mover and first opposition member, a maximum of 8 minutes for any other members, and a maximum of 8 minutes for the mover in reply.
Honourable members, the question is that the time limit for the speeches in the debate be adjusted as follows. A maximum of 10 minutes for the mover and first opposition member, a maximum of 8 minutes for any other member, and a maximum of 8 minutes for the mover in reply. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, government business, bill second reading.
Minister of Public Administration.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Establishment of Remote Workplaces and a 4-Day Work Week for Employees and Related Matters be now read a second time. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government pivoted to virtual platforms for all booking and occupancy management, such as travel agencies. Therefore, without a doubt, establishing remote workplaces is possible. The objective of this bill is to establish a framework for flexible working conditions via remote work and a 4-day work week for employees in Kairi and Shakonia. Current global challenges dictate that the government adopt ambitious and feasible national policies that aim to meet the needs arising from these challenges. It is legislation that has the potential of legitimizing new labor policies by promoting the welfare of all employees in Kairi and Shakonia. We have seen that the ferry system that employees who live on smaller islands use to commute is currently overburdened, leading to availability challenges to visitors when sailing amongst the islands. Madam Speaker, this bill will also prevent the pockets of the employees from being overburdened with transportation fees, leaving them with enough funds to provide a household and food for their families. Might I remind the opposition that it is the current government, having realized the need for rebuilding this nation, that invested in the success of the tourism sector through investing significant resources in tourism, business management, as well as information communication technology, which helps to bridge the gap and troubles we are currently having with internet connectivity. This focus on skills have also led to foreign investment, which requires that these foreign investors employ up to 60% of locals. This act will further stimulate economic growth without neglecting inclusivity and social welfare, as outlined by provisions given in Clause 9, where the employer shall not refuse the application for remote work if the employee is pregnant, if the employee is disabled, has a health condition, or responsible for a child under the age of 5 years old, or is tasked with the care for a dependent with a disability. Madam Speaker, citizens of Kairi and Shekonia, for a country so heavily dependent on tourism, it is appropriate and proactive to diversify our economy from being one solely dependent on tourism to a multifaceted economy through innovation to safeguard it against unforeseen economic downturns as those which were caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. This bill would empower the highly qualified workforce with an adult literacy rate of 99.5% in the Republic of Kairi and Shekonia to work more productively and obtain greater personal and community welfare benefits. We are looking at legislation that allows us to transition into a 24-hour economy in the future. This bill will allow us to implement mechanisms for a 4-day work week and remote workplaces, which will further prevent and greatly decrease the occurrences of brain drain in the Republic of Kairi and Shekonia, as more persons have recently opted to obtain jobs in other countries because of the housing crisis on the two larger islands, that being Kairi and Shekonia. Additionally, this bill will go as far as bettering our current public healthcare service, which has not been totally efficient in providing timely care for citizens of Kairi and Shekonia. By introducing the remote work bill, it will allow for the files of patients to be digitally organized. A 4-day work week can allow for the healthcare service providers to be rejuvenated on the days that they are not physically at work, enhancing efficiency when they enter the workplace the following week. Might I also mention that this bill will also drastically reduce unemployment rates, which has been at 30% in 2020. However, it is now forecasted that by the end of 2022 into 2023, that will be at a mere 8%. Remote work and a 4-day work week may require an expansion in the number of employees needed to effectively operate a business venture. Therefore, we will further decrease this 8%. It may reduce to 1%. Might I say 0%? We realize that there exists a gap in our labor structure. We hope to address this through the Remote Workplace Act of 2022 by also implementing an Industrial Relations Commission, ensuring that there are regulations and standards regarding flexible work arrangements for both the employer and the employee. This bill is a response to the need to provide the avenue to promote the digitalization of work process for employees to apply to work remotely outside of traditional working arrangements and/or a 4-day work week. In retrospect, it is not a battle of ideology. It is a struggle for the collective welfare of all the citizens of the Republic of Kairi and Shakonia. That, irrespective of our differences or our distance between our islands, all of Kairi and Shakonia will come together to support the policies, interventions, and legislations that speak to their
Minister,
common welfare.
you have 2 minutes of speaking time left.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if there are areas for revision, it is our responsibilities as representatives of the people of Kairi and Shakonia to look out for such and do so in good faith. I call on the opposition to lend their support to this legislation. I call on the people of Kairi and Shakonia to lend their support to this legislation as we seek a Kairi and Shakonia on the march for greater development as the bill paves the way for digital transformation. Madam Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you.
Honourable members, I shall now propose the question for debate. The question is that a bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Establishment of Remote Workplaces and a 4-Day Work Week for Employees and Related Matters be now read a second time. Shadow Minister of Public Administration.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There should be no doubt that the opposition support the right to work remotely, that we support flexible working arrangements between employers and employees, and that we support greater connectivity of our nation's outer and lesser populated islands and the enrichment of its peoples. The problem, Madam Speaker, is that this bill will not accomplish any of these items. As drafted, this bill is dead in the water. The opposition will, as a party, will nevertheless support a bill that allows for remote working, subject to amendments. Madam Speaker, before outlining the ways in which we propose to do this, I just want to make clear that what the Honourable Minister for Public Administration has said today is twofold. Firstly, she has said that this government does not care for small businesses and that it is willing to sacrifice employers and employees alike, our own citizens and countrymen and women, at the altar of shallow political motives. The minister has termed this doctrine flexible arrangements, but it will do nothing but kill the small businesses, their innovation and their enterprise in our community. The minister states that the COVID pandemic affected us badly. Of course it did. It affected this entire world. But this policy would keep us living in the pandemic when it is time for us to move beyond it. Secondly, Madam Speaker, it is clear that this government could not care less for the rural communities of our country. These are the poorest, literally the most disconnected. This bill is nothing more than a sad summary of just how isolated the government and its members are from the people most in need in our community. But we on this side of the House work for all people of these islands. She talks about those people in need. How about the people in need in all of the corners of our island, not just on the two most populated upon which the government depends for its votes? So, Madam Speaker, what are we left with? Empty promises and an empty bill from a government on the run and scared of its track record on housing, on infrastructure and on healthcare. They are seeking an extended honeymoon from the obligations of actual government. We, this country's opposition, will bring them to task and save our country's economy from the ruin that it otherwise is destined for. Madam Speaker, let me take you now on a journey through our country and through the passages of this bill that could bring our economy down with it. My esteemed and honourable colleagues will expand on these points in due course. Let me start at the courthouse, not too far from where we are now, with our legal system. Does the party opposite believe in the rule of law? How about the separation of powers? I have an answer for you. It's at section 5 of this bill, where the answer is clearly no. What kind of shotgun bill creates a new politically appointed tribunal staffed by the minister's closest friends? I'll tell you, Madam Speaker, this one does. I would have not been surprised had this bill been drafted by a law student, and in fact, I'm not surprised at all that it has been drafted by the governing party opposite. In the coming days, we will propose the establishment of a new mechanism to select an independently selected industrial relations tribunal with a non-partisan selection process for the appointment and removal of those judges. That is what, by the way, a responsible 21st century government looks like. Now, join me further, Madam Speaker, to the rural islands of our community, where this government has failed to rectify internet connection and power supply issues. Tell me how this bill will serve those furthest away from benefiting from it. The party opposite will say, let the employers pay for those benefits. But employers are staffed by people too, those with limited means who work hard to make our country great. Robbing them to compensate for the government's connectivity failings, why are we going to burden them, these hardworking contributors to our community, because this government does not stand for them? They stand for themselves and the metropolitan elite alone. This is why the National Labour Party will seek to amend the bill by providing for the onus to be shifted away from employers and to the government to rectify its mistakes and actually act in the benefit of the very people they purport to represent. If the party opposite will not stop to take responsibility, then we will ensure that they do so. Now, Madam Speaker, continuing our journey, let me take you, unbelievably, into the privacy of people's own homes. Section 11, Clause 11, subsection 1 and 2. As if the government has not done enough already to damage employer-employee relationships, how about we look at this? They would set to make employers responsible for the health and safety of someone in their own home. They would extend the parameters of the workplace beyond the confines of offices into the private layer of individuals. I am not sure who the government takes our citizenry for, but they are certainly not fools. A home is someone's private space, an intimate extension of their right to privacy. We, as the Labour Party, will defend that to the letter. We will seek to amend this legislation to minimize the liability of employers where employees want to work from home. This will restore, above everything, certainty to industrial relations and strengthen and solidify the rights of employers and employees alike in this country. Where the government has abdicated concern for employers, we will restore faith for them. We will not regulate people's private space, but we will allow hard work to proceed on a flexible basis that puts neither party involved in the arrangement at a severe disadvantage. Staying within the confines of Section 11, I'm also not sure whether any of the individuals on the government benches know how fines work. I think that for so long, the government really does wish for the decimation of small and medium-sized businesses. Maybe the elite members of this government on the other side can tell us how they expect $250,000 for each breach of this act are to be forthcoming by ordinary, hard-working people. Simply because they might have the funds to pay such a fine does not mean that they can extend that benefit to the individuals who contribute and make this country great. But the National Labour Party will ensure that they are not to be taken advantage of. Madam Speaker, I move on to Section 16 of this. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move on to section 16 of this act. Madam Speaker, we attend to the 4-day working week. Does anyone on the other side, including the Minister for Public Administration, are they aware of how essential services work? They are essential. Can someone from the government side please tell me how they expect healthcare to be conducted on a 4-day working week? How teaching should be done remotely? How policing can take place on a flexible basis? These are essential services upon which we cannot compromise for the shallow goals of the party sitting opposite. Furthermore, I'm not convinced either that any of the ministers sitting opposite are fully aware about how wages are calculated. What do they tell the rural workmen when they enter a 4-day working week and they are then short paid and the employer fails to pay them a full salary? They will all stay comfortable, but how about that hard-working individual who has now fallen short and is left out to dry? Madam Speaker, we will seek to rectify this by making an amendment that protects society and its workers overall, and my colleagues will be expanding upon that. Lastly, Madam Speaker, we will also amend a provision at the commencement of this Act that stops this bill from applying to everyone. As we have said, it would have deleterious effects on the entire of our public services regime. It would allow our country to fall into ruin, it would stop our economy, and it would damage our international reputation. We are the party for the working class, we are the party for a fairer future and for good labour relations. We are the party of the rule of law and of good government, and we will bring this government to account accordingly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022 at 10 a.m.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022 at 10 a.m. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022 at 10 a.m.